Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, your home for Pittsburgh Penguins news and analysis. You can find us on YouTube at Tip of the Ice-Burgh. Make sure that you like, share, and subscribe if you enjoy our content, or you can catch us anywhere you get your podcast from. The Pittsburgh Penguins, they just can't stop winning. All of a sudden, a 5-3 victory over the St. Louis Blues in Game 2 of their current homestand at PPG Paints Arena, and all of a sudden their win streak has now reached 3 games. It started with a 3-1 victory over the Minnesota Wild last weekend in Minnesota. It continued on Tuesday with a 3-2 overtime victory against the Vegas Golden Knights, and like we mentioned at the top of the show, they take down the St. Louis Blues last night on home ice. All three of those teams are fighting for playoff positioning in the Western Conference, so these are not cheap wins at all by the Pittsburgh Penguins. And why is this notable? Why is a 3-game winning streak something that I have to, at the very least, title an episode mentioning? Because it's just the second time that they have won 3 straight games all season long. The other time that they did so was between November 27th and December 3rd, when they had a streak that reached 4 straight, which means the Penguins are now 1 win away from their season-long win streak. Certainly not helping the case for those that want to see them tank out and finish in the top 3 in the NHL draft lottery. But nonetheless, the product on the ice has been pretty good the last handful of games. And part of that is, the difference that good goaltending can make for any team in the NHL, whether they are ranked first or ranked 31st. If you have good goaltending, you're going to have a chance in this league 9 times out of 10. And Tristan Jarry has been the epitome of that over this 3-game stretch. He remains absolutely phenomenal between the pipes, and he has been the common thread in all of these games. Last night, it was 33 saves on 36 shots, and once again, him having to stand tall early in the game, which is something that he struggled with throughout this season whenever he was having his struggles at the NHL level. Countless goals given up on the first shot on goal, many more given up on the second, the third, the fourth. You get the picture. The Penguins were almost spotting every other team 1 goal before they could even get their legs underneath them. Well, that has been a big difference between Tristan Jarry then and Tristan Jarry of this week. 15 saves in the first period of play yesterday from Tristan Jarry, and he has been extremely solid for the Pittsburgh Penguins, and it's just hilarious that it's gotten to the point where a 3-game win streak from Tristan Jarry at this stage of the season means the Penguins' playoff chances, according to Money Puck, have gone from 0.0% chance to 0.1% chance. To quote Dumb and Dumber, so you're telling me there's a chance. Unlikely, but at the same time, a stellar week for Tristan Jarry. And yesterday specifically, they did it a little bit of a different way, right? You had a 3-1 victory where one of those goals for the Penguins was an empty netter. You have a 3-2 overtime victory where the Pittsburgh Penguins are relying on multi-goal performances from Sidney Crosby. The other goal coming in both of those games coming from some of their other big stars. Erik Karlsson gets the overtime winner on Tuesday. Evgeni Malkin scores the other goal in Minnesota. But yesterday, we got some depth scoring. We got some unlikely characters lighting the lamp, and we got a couple of milestones here, at the very least, endings of some very long droughts. And that's where we're going to start. First goal for Ryan Graves in 72 games. And you know how I mentioned none of these victories have been cheap victories for the Pittsburgh Penguins? That certainly was not a cheap goal for Ryan Graves, picking a corner on Jordan Binnington and lighting the lamp early in this one, giving the Penguins a 1-0 lead. And then later in the game, we saw the first goal as a Pittsburgh Penguin for both former Maple Leafs. Connor Timmons scores the goal to make it 2-0, and then Connor Dewar scores a goal to make it 3-1 at that point in time. And the Pittsburgh Penguins, well, they certainly enjoyed having guys not named Crosby, not named Malkin, not named Letang, be able to help them towards a victory in this one. I got to also give a shout out to Blake Lizotte, who has been playing very well over the last couple of weeks, and he was playing master facilitator yesterday, setting up 2 of those 3 goals that I mentioned before. But it all leads to the Pittsburgh Penguins closing out the St. Louis Blues and closing out their 3rd consecutive victory. Like I mentioned, just the 2nd time that they've been able to say that this season. That's not the only piece of news that we've seen this week, something I wanted to get to all week, but couldn't get to until today. The Penguins have signed 3 prospects to professional contracts. Let's start with Daniel Laatsch, who signed a 2-year ELC. The left shot defenseman was a 7th-round pick of the Penguins back in 2021, which, if you're keeping score, is the first draft of the Ron Hextall era with the Pittsburgh Penguins organization. Laatsch just finished up his senior year with the Wisconsin Badgers, and presumably is going to be heading to professional hockey at the beginning of next year. So we'll have to keep our eyes on him as the summer progresses. Maybe a name to watch out for at the Prospects Challenge next fall, and certainly a name to watch out for at the training camp next fall. Another defenseman signed to an ELC is Chase Pietila. 3 years for Pietila. The right shot defenseman is finishing up his 2nd season with Michigan Tech, and it looks like he is also going to be headed to professional hockey sooner rather than later. Signed yesterday to an amateur tryout by the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins, so that means he will join them for his first taste of professional action at the tail end of this season, and hopefully he's joining them for a long playoff run. You look at the defense down at the Wilkes-Barre Scranton level, and there's a lot of new names down there. Philip Kral has been integral all season long. I believe it's Dan Renouf has been one of the few pieces that has just been in the lineup through most of this season. You got guys like Mac Hollowell that the organization thinks highly of. You have highly touted prospects like Owen Pickering, who are going to be leading the charge down there. You're going to add Chase Pietila to those list of names and see if he can get some ice time with a lot of these guys that have been with the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins as they hunt down the number 1 seed in the Atlantic Division, And the last name I want to mention, somebody who had a professional contract with the Penguins organization, but not with the Pittsburgh Penguins themselves. Somebody who was signed to the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins and has been playing extremely well for the Pens AHL affiliate. Avery Hayes gets a little pat on the back, gets a reward for his hard work over the last 2 seasons, signing a 2-year entry-level contract. Now, Hayes originally signed with Wilkes-Barre prior to last season. After 4 seasons in the OHL, he turned heads at that Prospects Challenge 2 seasons ago. He turned heads once again in Buffalo at the Prospects Challenge this past season, and that's why when I say to keep an eye out for guys like Daniel Laatsch, when I say to keep an eye out for guys like Chase Pietila, that's whenever we get to see these guys before they disperse throughout their corners of the country and corners of the world, because they come into Pittsburgh, more specifically, they go to Buffalo, and they put on display what they have with guys that you might see them playing with in the future within this organization. That's where Hayes got his start, and he was extremely, extremely impressive playing in both of those tournaments the past 2 years. Now, last year, he bounced between the ECHL and the AHL. This year, he has found a more defined role with the American Hockey League affiliate. Nick Hart, who is the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins play-by-play broadcaster, put on Twitter yesterday following this news, quote, "Hayes has a tireless motor and fits anywhere in your lineup. First line wing, 4th line energy, power play, penalty kill. He checks every box." And that's exactly what you're asking from a guy who was undrafted and trying to earn everything that he gets. And that's exactly what Avery Hayes has been able to do last season and especially into this season. If you look at what he's done this year, he has become a big part of the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins forward core. Right now, he's playing with Rutger McGroarty and Vasily Ponomarov on the Penguins' second line, has 17 goals and 35 points in 44 games played this season. And I think that just goes to show that you need players that are going to be able to emerge out of nowhere. The Penguins are in a position right now where, yes, they might, as we talked about yesterday on the full episode of The Tip of the Iceberg, they might be kind of shifting gears a little bit, trying to get back into that win now mode after a year down in 2024-25. But for the long-term health of this organization, they're going to need some of these guys that are undrafted to come out of nowhere and to make big impacts. They're going to need some of these guys that aren't considered top prospects, not your Rutger McGroartys, not your Ville Koivunen, who everybody and their mother is aware of and excited for. You need some of these other guys, these unknowns, these Avery Hayeses, to kind of make their way throughout the minors, build and develop, and potentially become a key piece in the future for the Penguins' bottom 6. Avery Hayes is a guy that, as of right now, fits that mold. He obviously needs to keep developing. But the big thing for him is he needs to continue to build that chemistry with that group that's down there. We heard from Jason Spezza yesterday on the Sportsnet Pittsburgh broadcast, continuing to say, we want these guys to grow together. How important is it that you can build those relationships with your young prospects so they all move up together and they start to win together at that next level? That's how the Penguins view their prospect pipeline right now. And if Avery Hayes can just wind his way in with the likes of Rutger McGroarty, with the likes of Ville Koivunen, with the likes of Tristan Bros, with the likes of Vasily Ponomarev, and he's able to build chemistry with those guys, it's going to make jumping from the AHL to the NHL a little bit easier. I'm not going to say it's easy. It never is easy. It is a massive jump to make from AHL to NHL, and you have to be on your P's and Q's 24/7 when you do make that jump. But it gets a little bit easier when you've already played so many minutes. You've already, who knows, maybe gone on to win playoff rounds with the guys you're surrounded with the guys that you're on the ice with. And that is a huge, huge factor in what the Pittsburgh Penguins are trying to do with this next era of Penguins hockey, with this next generation of Pittsburgh Penguins. They want them to learn, obviously, from guys like Crosby, from guys like Malkin, from guys like Letang, from guys like Brian Rust. But they want them to all come up in a wave. You don't want to bring them up one at a time and potentially have to send them back down. You want them to all be ready, and you want it to be a massive youth movement, the likes of which we saw back in 2009, the likes of which we saw in 2016 with your Brian Rusts back in the day, with your Conor Sherrys back in the day, with your Carter Rowneys back in the day, Tom Kuhnockles. All these guys were AHL guys that had played together for a year or maybe even more, and they come up to the NHL level and they create magic. That's what the Penguins want out of their prospects, and that is what Avery Hayes has started to build for himself at the American Hockey League level. The performance that he's had this year, I believe he's ranked in the top 5 in goals scored for Wilkes-Barre, and he's, as I mentioned before, implanted himself amongst the top 6 with a lot of the Penguins' top forward prospects. So shout out to Avery Hayes, getting a pat on the back, getting rewarded for a tremendous 2-year stint with the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins and the Penguins organization as a whole to this point in his career. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Tip of the Ice-Burgh. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this one. Remember, if you like this video, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe to us on YouTube at Tip of the Ice-Burgh, or you can catch us anywhere you get your podcasts from. We'll see you guys next time.